Welcome back. Deadly new coronavirus epidemic is our top story in this news bulletin. The death toll in China has risen to 360, more than the SARS epidemic of 2003. 3,000 new cases have been diagnosed and over 17,000 infected in the country. Outside China, there are 150 cases known and one person has died. This report will now tell you more.
Health workers with loudspeakers have been telling people not to leave their homes unless they absolutely have to. A scene from China's struggle to contain the new coronavirus. 1,000 doctors split into 68 medical teams are in Hubei province to contain the virus. As countries evacuate their citizens from China and test them, experts warn against ignoring no-symptom carriers.
This is not very common, but there are cases. There must be a reason for administering the virus test to these people. In most cases, they have been in close contact with infected patients, or they have been to Wuhan, or in close contact with people who have been in Wuhan.
A public health emergency has taken effect in the US, banning entry to any foreign national that recently visited China. Most people returning to their countries, however, are being kept in quarantine.
Of these repatriated people, on the basis of health, 36 had symptoms on arrival and 16 returned to their countries. There are still about 20 people who are now on French soil and will remain in quarantine for 14 days.
More countries are imposing travel restrictions to and from China, while an iPhone component manufacturer has moved production from China to India. In Wuhan itself, a 1,000-bed hospital built especially to treat the virus is ready to take its first patient after being constructed in only 8 days.
In a related development, South Korea says it will not evacuate its diplomats from the coronavirus-hit Chinese city of Wuhan. The Foreign Ministry said there are still 120 South Koreans living in Hubei province. It said the Wuhan residents are in the city on a long-term basis. The ministry said they are appealing for further support. Earlier, 701 South Koreans were evacuated from Wuhan on 2 chartered planes. Seoul has reported 3 more cases of the coronavirus, bringing the total to 15, with 87 people in quarantine. Thai doctors say they've had some success in treating the new coronavirus with a combination of flu and HIV medication. They say the treatment results in rapid improvement in patient health within 48 hours. More in this report.
The doctors at Rajaviti Hospital in Bangkok say they've used the novel treatment with several patients in their care. The method uses a mixture of the HIV drugs, lopanavir and ritonavir, and combines them with the flu drug oseltamivir.
This is the standard treatment that we have used with patients. It is a mixture of anti-HIV drugs and flu drug oseltamivir, which China has been using and has cured Middle East respiratory syndrome. The mixture of both these treatments shows vast improvements within 48 hours after applying the treatment, and the results turns negative.
Chinese doctors have already been using these separate drugs to treat the virus. But doctors at this hospital are the first to combine all 3. Thailand has recorded 19 cases of the coronavirus. 8 people have since recovered and returned home. 11 others are still receiving treatment.
Pakistan has announced resumption of its flights to and from virus-hit China. The Civil Aviation Authority cancelled flights to Beijing on January 30th amid the new coronavirus scare. The authority said China Airways' first flight from Beijing is scheduled to depart for Pakistan today. Meanwhile, a Pakistani doctor, Usman Janjua, is hailed for volunteering to treat patients in the Chinese city of Wuhan. In a tweet, the Chinese embassy in Pakistan said Beijing appreciates Janjua for joining the fight against coronavirus. It said Janjua is a teacher from Changsha Medical University in China and hails from Dina, Jhelum, Pakistan. Now, Trump's Middle East peace plan has garnered a lot of attention. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation is holding a ministerial-level meeting in Jeddah today to discuss the U.S. proposed Middle East peace plan. The meeting will be attended by all member states except Iran, as Saudi Arabia declined to issue visas to Iranian diplomats. The OIC says it will issue its official response to President Donald Trump's so-called deal of the century after the meeting. The UN Security Council is also scheduled to meet on February 10th to discuss the plan. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will attend the meeting. Earlier, the European Union slammed Trump's deal, saying it violates many internationally agreed parameters. Meanwhile, Palestinians are holding protests across the occupied territory and other parts of the world against Israeli atrocities and Trump's plan. In Lebanon, demonstrators gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy in North Beirut to protest against Donald Trump's peace plan. 6 people were injured when security forces used pepper spray to regulate the crowd in the vicinity. Demonstrators threw rocks at security forces while burning U.S. and Israeli flags. The security was already heightened due to the prospect of demonstrations around the embassy. The peace plan has been welcomed by Israel, but widely criticized by Arab leaders in the Middle East. Iran and Turkey have called for the Muslim world to build a united front against the U.S. Middle East peace plan. Tehran state media said Iranian and Turkish foreign ministers discussed the so-called deal of the century in a phone call. Iran's Javad Zarif and his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Cavusoglu expressed their opposition against what they called the sale of Palestine. On Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump revealed the long-awaited political aspect of his Middle East peace plan. The proposal has already been rejected by the Palestinians, the UN, and the Arab League. Following the plan's unveiling, thousands of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza took to the streets to condemn it. Turkey claims 4 of its soldiers were killed and 9 others wounded in shelling by the Syrian military in the Idlib region. Turkish Defense Ministry says it destroyed Syrian army's posts in retaliation to the aggression. The ministry said shelling took place despite being notified about the position of Turkish forces. It said 1 wounded soldier is in critical condition. Ankara has 12 observation posts in the region as part of a Turkey-Russia deal to prevent a regime offensive. But recent escalation in violence has posed a threat to peace efforts. The people in occupied Golan Heights have staged a general strike against aggressive and expansionist Israeli policy. This comes after a meeting of religious figures and dignitaries from the Golan at the town of Majd al-Shams. Protesters say Israel is setting up wind turbines on agricultural land and confiscating their property. They say they will confront the plan and Israeli soldiers on the ground. The protesters accused Israel of having an aggressive agenda and being an expansionist power. More from the Middle East. UN Special Envoy to Yemen Martin Griffiths is in the rebel-held capital of Sana'a to open a medical air bridge. The plan, launched by the government coalition in cooperation with the World Health Organization, is scheduled to open today. Patients who cannot be treated in Yemen will be airlifted by UN-chartered flights from Sana'a to hospitals in Jordan and Egypt. Griffiths also met Houthi leaders who said government strikes are holding back the chances of making peace. Houthis called on the UN to quickly negotiate the release of prisoners of war and detainees. Military operations in Yemen have escalated in recent weeks, stifling attempts to end the civil war. Now moving on to Pakistan, whose Prime Minister Imran Khan has left for Malaysia on a 2-day official visit. The Prime Minister is visiting on the invitation of his Malaysian counterpart, Mahathir Mohamad. In a statement, the Foreign Office said the 2 Prime Ministers will sign important agreements. The Prime Minister will also address an event organized by the Institute of Strategic and International Studies in Malaysia. He will also highlight human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. This is PM Khan's second visit to Malaysia since assuming office. A United Nations report has endorsed Pakistan's stance on being a target of cross-border terrorism from Afghanistan. The report was released by the UN Security Council Committee overseeing sanctions against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The report said the terror groups Tehreek-e-Taliban and Jamaat-ul-Ahrar regularly conduct attacks on Pakistani border posts from Afghanistan. Pakistan has a firm stance that terrorists have been targeting the country from their bases in Afghanistan. The report is a testimony to the international recognition of the actions taken by Pakistan's security forces against terrorism. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and ASEAN Secretary General Lim Jok-hoi are set to hold talks on a strategic partnership in Moscow today. Russia's foreign ministry says Moscow will boost coordination at international and regional platforms. Spokesperson Maria Zakharova said the expansion of cooperation in trade, economic and humanitarian fields will be discussed. Zakharova said Moscow aims to pursue talks on joint efforts within the formation of the Greater Eurasian Partnership. The ministry said ASEAN states have directed over $4 billion of accumulated investment into the Russian economy. In the U.S., the Democratic Party will kick off their 2020 presidential race in Iowa today. Party supporters will pick the candidate they want to face President Trump in November's presidential election. The favorite, Bernie Sanders, will crash with Joe Biden, while Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg expect to gain momentum. More in this report.
The race for the White House will officially be underway tonight when Iowans cast their votes in the first presidential caucus. President Trump will be the unopposed Republican nominee, but Democratic nominees will have to fight through a crowded field of rivals. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is on a roll after peaking at the right time just before the Iowa caucus.
Tomorrow night is the beginning. It is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
The liberal left-leaning Sanders narrowly leads the polls, while centrist ex-Vice President Joe Biden is still a strong contender.
Look, folks, the fact is that we're in a situation where every 4 years, democracy starts here in the state of Iowa, and it starts here in the state of Iowa.
Victory in Iowa doesn't guarantee anyone the nomination, but it could give the winner a crucial shot in the arm.
We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. In the worsening migrant crisis, Malta has rescued 47 migrants from the rough seas in the Mediterranean between the island and Libya. Rescue officials say the operation was carried out by Maltese armed forces. The weather in the area is worsening, with wind speeds picking up in a low-pressure system forming over Italy. The rescue came after a group of 77 migrants landed in Malta last week. In the UK, police have shot dead a man after 2 people were stabbed in South London. They say the incident is terror-related. Armed police cordoned off the area on the main shopping street of Streatham. Officials say they were waiting for updates on the condition of the wounded. Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted his thoughts are with the injured and others affected. Mayor of London Sadiq Khan has thanked emergency services for their swift response. In Burkina Faso, 20 people have been killed in a militant attack in a village in the northern province of Seno. Security officials say the heavily armed attackers were riding motorbikes. They said the assailants executed locals in the village of Bani. The attack comes less than a week after 39 people were killed in Soum province. A surge in violence in the West African country has killed hundreds and forced nearly 1 million from their homes. Over the past 2 years, much of the north has remained ungovernable. An IMF delegation will hold talks with Pakistan's government on the release of the third tranche of a loan under the $6 billion extended fund facility. The delegation is arriving in Pakistan today. In a statement, IMF official DEFIANCE said the delegation will conduct a quarterly review of Pakistan's economy. She said the mission will review the performance of different ministries and departments. The official said energy and tax reforms will also come under the review. The talks will continue till 13th of February. The Shanghai Composite has crashed, plummeting nearly 9% in the first trading session today after an extended Lunar New Year break. Fears over the new coronavirus have pushed investors to offload major stakes in their equities amid panic selling. This comes despite China's central bank's announcement of injecting over $170 billion to ease the impact of the outbreak. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei 225 also lost over 1%, but Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained nearly 0.5% as shares of Chinese tech giant Tencent and Alibaba jumped nearly 2% each. Seoul's Kospi is trading flat after South Korea posted over 6% fall in its exports in the first month of this year. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.